when 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person, the old life is gone, a new life has begun. What it's really saying is that the very moment you believed in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, you became a new person. Old things have passed away. But isn't that a bit too daring, a bit too big, too bold and audacious? That's like a very audacious statement to make, because the truth is, it doesn't look like anything changed. Look at your physical body. If you are tall, you suddenly didn't become short. If you are light in complexion, you suddenly didn't become dark in complexion. If you could not speak French, salvation didn't suddenly give you the ability to speak French. If you found maths difficult, like I said in the past conversation, you suddenly didn't find it interesting. So the question naturally arises, what exactly became new? And that's why I've titled this little conversation, what actually changes when you are born again? And this second part of the conversation I've titled it, Jesus in my spirit. Jesus were in my spirit. So to answer that, I want to take you through two passages of the scriptures. The first one is a bit long, so I'll just read it and pass comment as I read it through. Ephesians 2 verse 1 to 10. Verse 1 says, once you are dead because of your disobedience and your many sins, you lived in sin like the rest of the world, obeying the devil, the commander of the parts in the unseen world. It is the spirit at work in the heart of those who refuse to obey God. All of us used to live that way, following the passionate desires and inclinations of our sinful nature. By our very nature, we were subject to God's anger, just like everyone else. Here, Paul describes a state where we do not have a relationship with God, because we have a relationship with the devil, and because the devil is our master. The only option we had was to obey the devil's command. We could only respond to one command, and that is the devil's command: the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. So we had no appreciation of the laws of God. We simply pursued our cravings and responded to the devil's command, howbeit unknowingly. And like everyone else, we were going to be judged. We were already condemned to hell. God's judgment was going to come upon us. That's what he meant when he said we were once dead because of our disobedience and many sins. Let's look at verse 4 to 6. But God is so rich in mercy, he loved us so much that even though we were dead because of our sins, he gave us life when he raised Christ from the dead. It is only by God's grace that you have been saved. For he raised us from the dead along with Christ and seated us with him in heavenly realms, because we were united with Jesus Christ. So by believing the gospel, this is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. All of the things mentioned in verse 1 to 3 was reversed. Now, my relationship with the devil is cancelled. The devil no longer has the right to control me. He can suggest, he can try, but he no longer can force or compel me. So what really changed? What changed at salvation was your spirit, not your body, not your emotion, not your personality, but your inner man. Your spirit came alive to God. You now have a father-child relationship with God. You now have the ability to appreciate and desire and love to fulfill God's law. Now your spirit is alive, saved from the devil and the penalty of sin. Your spirit is alive. Your spirit is alive to God, to God's plan, alive to God's purposes, alive to God's desire. That is Jesus in your spirit. That is Jesus in my spirit. Finally, there are several Bible passages that go to say the Spirit of God now lives in our heart the moment we believe the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I'm just going to read one of them. Galatians 4 verse 6. It says, and because we are his children, God has sent the Spirit of his Son in our hearts, prompting us to call out, Abba, Father. The Spirit of God is now in our hearts. The Spirit of God now dwells within the believer. This is not mere symbolism. It is a spiritual reality. So when 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone. A new life has begun. What became new is not your body. What became new is not your soul. It's not your emotion that became new, your thinking, your bank account, or your physical clothes. What is new is the arrival of the Spirit of God in your heart. What became new is your inner being. Now, even though what became new is the Spirit of God in our heart, that is not the end of it. The new spirit in me is now supposed to influence, affect, and have effect on my soul, my response to life's challenges, my attitude, my worldview, my perspective, right? Basically, it is supposed to influence every area of my life. Not just that alone, it is also supposed to influence my relationship with others. It is expected to impact my community and the entire world. The Spirit of God now dwells within my heart. I am alive to God. I am alive to God's will, to God's plan, to God's desire, to God's purpose for my life. I am alive to the Spirit of God, to the laws of God. I am free from the devil's bondage. The next question then becomes, if it is true that my spirit is now new, why does my mind still struggle? Why do my emotions still fluctuate? Why doesn't my life really reflect what happened inside me? And that's why we move to the next conversation. Jesus in my soul. What became new is Jesus in our spirit. What became new is the arrival of the Spirit of God in your heart. Then Jesus now moves to our soul. And that's what the next conversation is about. Remember, God has a plan for your life. The devil has a plan for your life. And I hope that these conversations will help you work in God's plan and avoid the devil's plan. I'll see you in the next conversation. Jesus in my soul.